Now is the time to find out what a pilgrimage to the Holy Land can mean in hearing the Gospels. When you've been to the Holy Land, the readings at Mass come to life. Go to relevantradio.com, keyword Holy Land. relevantradio.com, keyword Holy Land.
The following is a Relevant Radio program and is protected under U.S. copyright laws. This program is made possible through the contributions of listeners like you. Support Relevant Radio by clicking on the donate icon at www.relevantradio.com.
This is a big week for fighting genocide, though that's not leading the news cycles right now. While media have mostly focused on politics, our best leaders in Congress, the church, and human rights organizations have launched a joint effort to move a congressional genocide resolution forward and get the U.S. State Department to acknowledge the ISIS genocide of Christians. What's the Secretary of State saying? And what difference will it make to call it what it is? I'm Sheila Liaugminas. Right now, it's 5 minutes after the hour. Time to take a closer look. Welcome to the program. Thanks for tuning in. I've covered this for years, and I will continue to, trying to help those helping the vulnerable, threatened, and endangered religious minorities, especially targeted Christians, in the path of the rampaging ISIS murderers and destroyers of ancient shrines and holy sites. It just breaks your heart when you see that they're blowing up ancient shrines and holy sites, and they will never be restored again. But worse than that is the massacre of course, of whole populations of humans, mostly Christians. I've called on you, besides covering this and bringing in experts, I've called on you time and again with the help of those on the front lines of this battle for human rights. I've had them on, all of the top leaders, to spread awareness and to call on your elected representatives to do something. Joining me now is one who not only is doing something, he's been leading the effort to protect the religious freedom of the Christians who are in the path of murderers and terrorists, and to get the government to call genocide what it is, to unleash more help directed to those imperiled. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is here, protector of conscience rights, religious liberty, and moral law. He's the author of the Healthcare Conscience Rights Act and co-chair of the Religious Minorities in the Middle East Caucus, a member of the House Appropriations Committee, and the author of the Genocide Resolution. Congressman Fortenberry, welcome back. Thank you for all you do and for bringing us virtually breaking news today.
Well, Sheila, always a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for what you do. Your voice is so important to try to not let our consciences go numb in the midst of ever-increasing drama, seemingly daily, about more assaults on human dignity. And clearly, there's a whole spectrum of things we could talk about, but the dire circumstances of the Christians and Yazidis, as well as other minorities in the Middle East, just demand action. And so we've put together a bipartisan resolution. About 200 members of the House of Representatives, Republicans and Democrats, have said this is genocide, and that is a very powerful word, but nonetheless it needs to be stated.
It does. Kathryn Jean Lopez, who's coming on in the second half of today's show, on yesterday, she wrote a National Review article that spoke directly to a hearing you chaired and asked Secretary Kerry directly yourself about this. But recently, in the month of February, she wrote a National Review article titled "Notice the Genocide," and I thought, what a good title! It's just right there. It says it. Call it what it is. Notice the genocide. Yeah. So in the one posted yesterday, that I already knew about this, but I was glad to see that. That's why she's coming on to talk about it. The reporting is, and I'm up on this as well from other sources there. So, Congressman Fortenberry, you were questioning Secretary of State Kerry and referring to the, quote, forced evacuation and displacement and cleansing ethnically and religiously happening to Christians in the world today. I was watching some of the video when you questioned him about this and noticed that you're calling on him to call it what it is, and then he thanked you for you said, I want to call on you to assert your authority and power for the future of the region, it depends on this very thing. And he listened to you and he said, well, I'll look at the evidence, consider the evidence. He thanked you and he said, I'll make a decision on this. What is there to decide and consider? It's obvious to all of us who look at it.
Well, it is obvious to me, too, and there are a number of groups, including the International Association of Genocide Scholars, who have called this genocide. The Yazidi community has called it genocide. The United States Catholic bishops, Pope Francis, Hillary Clinton, Marco Rubio, and others, as well as, again, 200 members of Congress. The Secretary has to go through an internal process, a deliberative process in terms of the legal criteria. I'm looking at a situation in which there is a systematic attempt to exterminate entire groups of people through beheading, through crucifixion, through forced evacuation from their land. These people are under the threat or have been killed. This is a genocide. It is clear. I thought the hearing was my opportunity to, again, present my case in front of the Secretary as he deliberates through this and hopefully makes the right decision soon.
So what came of that when he said, okay, I'm looking at the evidence and I will consider this and make a decision? Is there a timetable you have to go on?
Interestingly, there is a timetable. March 17th, as I recall, was a time-specific date that was actually put in the last appropriations bill, the budget bill that was passed by Congress. I did not do that. Another member of Congress did that. It creates some pressure, if you will, in terms of the time horizon for a decision. It can be debated whether or not that's good or bad, but it is what it is, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to use my time before the Secretary to try to make my best argument and appeal to sympathies and get this done. If we are able to call it genocide, it raises international consciousness. There is a scandal of silence in this regard. There's a scandal of indifference. And it sets the conditions, the preconditions, if you will, for when there, hopefully, miraculously perhaps, is some type of security and cultural and political settlement in the Middle East, that these ancient faith traditions, Christians, Yazidis, and others, have a rightful place to reintegrate back into their society and then are protected and included in the dynamics of those societies. That has not happened. And that's what has partly been the problem leading to this tragedy. And so this is why I think the Genocide Declaration is so important, and hopefully State does the right thing and does it soon.
It's scandalous. It actually is not borderline. It is scandalous that they haven't. And I know that when Nina Shea was on the program recently, just the other day, she said on February 4th, the European Parliament, with near unanimity and solid socialist support, passed a resolution declaring that ISIS is committing genocide against Christians and Yazidis and other religious and ethnic minorities. But despite that a foreign policy mandate to speak out against religious persecution, the U.S. government has so far been silent on whether this epic religious cleansing of Christians from the heart of the Middle East ranks among the gravest of crimes. And when one sees the evidence and he sees the reporting and the people coming out of there doing these human rights, the front lines work, it's just stunning to know that, like you said, Hillary Clinton herself is on board. Marco Rubio is on board. You know, how can the State Department? Is it bureaucracy, Congressman?
Sheila, I was just almost hoping you wouldn't ask me this question because I don't know. I can't figure it out either, whether it's bureaucracy, whether there's some concern. I mean, to me, it's apparent. It's the right thing to do. It would be powerful. Yeah. And in fact, with the Secretary, I raised the issue that in 2004, then Secretary of State Colin Powell came before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he declared what was happening in Darfur a genocide. Right. And it helped put a stop to that grim reality. We need to do the same here for several reasons. It's unjust. It's an assault on human dignity. It is a threat to civilization itself. If this violation of the sacred space of all of humanity continues unabated, it creates the condition in which there is not only chaos, but there is just ongoing catastrophe for the international order, what little of it is left there in the Middle East, and then that could spread. So that's why not only does ISIL have to be stopped, but again, the conditions for reintegration of the Christian community and Yazidis and others back into their society where they have rightful claim are actually the necessary conditions for the stability and order of the Middle East going forward, if there is to be any hope at all. these communities actually were vibrant participants, even though small in number, vibrant participants in the rich tapestry that used to exist in the Middle East. And it is in dire threat of being completely wiped out. The United States must use our authority to speak and speak clearly. And again, it will have impact. That's why this is so critical. Thank you for letting me talk about it. I do not have the answer as to why this cannot proceed and proceed quickly. All I can do is try to pressure the system and make my own arguments and invite people to the position.
And I want to invite people to check out the Facebook show page, both show pages, on relevantradio.com. The show page has the same link. And then I posted it on Facebook as well for the page for a closer look. And folks, when you're there, click like, because I keep posting things here, and you'll see that in your newsfeed. What I've posted now on Congressman Fortenberry, what he's talking about, questioning Secretary of State Kerry. In that article about it are two videos. And one of them is Congressman Fortenberry questioning Secretary of State Kerry, calling on him to use his power and authority. And I want the listeners to click on that and read it and see it. See you ask those questions. And also, Congressman Fortenberry, that the story you told him about being in the room when Pope Francis was given a small crucifix that belonged to a young Syrian Christian man who was told to convert to Islam or be killed by ISIS. He refused to renounce his faith, and he was beheaded. And his mother was able to recover his body and his cross, and that's how it wound up in the hands of Pope Francis. And he thanked you for telling him that and said he would consider all of the evidence and so forth. But to come back to, I really want listeners to hear this. What then what would that unlock or unleash, or what would be the vehicle to move forward more help if this is finally done and called a genocide against Christians?
Well, it has implications for security policy as well as migration policy. If I was fully in charge of this, I would immediately try to create safe haven space both in Iraq and in Syria so that persons who are having to flee the injustice can be repositioned so that once there is a security and political settlement, they can return to their homeland. That's one thing. The other is, again, by raising international consciousness, it becomes more than just the European Parliament, more than just the United States, but again, a movement of the entire responsible community of nations against this dire threat to civilization itself. And again, that has implications for security assistance and economic arrangements moving forward, as well as reintegration of these communities once there is some stability there. That's why it's the gateway, it's the platform for all of the broader discussions that need to take place and hopefully can happen once ISIL is defeated and there is some type of reasoned transition in Syria, as well as a regeneration, if you will, of the Iraqi central government and further empowerment of the Kurds, who have been quite helpful, frankly, in fighting ISIL. So that's what I would like to see. And by the way, if I could do this, Sheila, we have about 200 bipartisan co-sponsors.
Yes.
The persons are listening to this and their member of Congress is on it. Send them an email and thank them. Please. Or write them a note. It's called HCON, House Concurrent Resolution 75. So just remember this number is 75. And if the person's listening will write their Congress member, if they're on the bill, and thank them, that helps. It reinforces what the member is doing. If they're not on the bill, ask them to get on it. I haven't found anybody that's very reluctant to do so. Some people are, but again, this is a broad bipartisan effort. In fact, it's transpartisan because it's about humanity. It's not about politics.
And Congressman, and I'll put that on both my Facebook pages and on Twitter as well, HCON75. But is that would it work also if people called it the genocide resolution?
Yes,
Bill?
it's fine. The genocide resolution will work fine as well.
Okay, good.
And what will happen if you do that? Members of Congress will stop me in the hall and say, Jeff, that genocide that you're working on, I want on it. I mean, it makes a difference.
That's what we need. So everyone listening to us right now, all of you in New York, out in Austin, up in the Twin Cities, in the Chicago area, from coast to coast, up in Helena, Montana, all across this country, Philly, everyone listening to us right now, wherever you are on the app, any part of the United States or anywhere you are, any one of you, and can and should contact your elected representatives, whether you go into their district office or you call their switchboard in Washington, D.C. It's really easy to find your congressman. House.gov, Senate.gov. House.gov, easy. And then you put in your zip code and it tells you who they are. Contact them and let them know you want to. I'll post this online. HCON 75's House Concurrent Resolution. But it's also called the Genocide Resolution. They know what that means. Those who have signed on to it, please thank them. Those who haven't, please urge them to. Because if enough of them hear from enough of you, they're going to stop Congressman Fortenberry in the hall and say, hey, Congressman, I'd like to sign on to that Genocide Resolution. That will bring help to so many countless desperate people who, Congressman Fortenberry, probably look at the U.S. and say, where is our help? What is the mighty United States doing?
That's right. That's exactly right. As so many people, you'd be just shocked, the conversations that I have. The world depends upon us, Sheila. Now, we can't be the world's policeman and all that, but in terms of the values that are still reside here, they're under stress, but that still reside here, they compel people to look toward us. They know that we are a society that believes in the basic principles of liberty that flow forth from human dignity, and that we have set up governing structures that allow people to express themselves, freedoms, if you will, and allow people to find their own way in life, economically and otherwise, to build out flourishing lives. People know this all over the world. They still do. They long to. Even in countries that hate us, you find individuals really have this deep sense of respect for the United States and the values. So you're right. They turn to us, and this is another way in which we can use our authority, use our gifts, and perhaps our duty, if you will, to stand for that which is beyond essential. It is necessary to preserve life and the conditions for flourishing moving forward, or the conditions for just some basic stability. Because if this goes unchecked and we're silent, what have you left? What is left? The whole idea of human dignity and sacred space upon which stable governance and the protection of persons is built, really order and civilization, is gone.
It's incumbent upon us with freedom, with rights, and with gifts, as Congressman Fortenberry said, come responsibilities. And we all have a responsibility. How can any of us have a day without this on our minds? Some of us beat this drum all the time because they are the voiceless. They need us to be their voices. And Congressman Fortenberry is the voice in Congress. He authored the Genocide Resolution. We're going to continue to drive that forward and spread awareness. And coming right up after a short break, and I let Congressman go back and get back to work at Congress, we're going to talk with In Defense of Christians, because they've jointly partnered with Knights of Columbus and all these other organizations to launch a petition on the same day Congressman Fortenberry was questioning Secretary Kerry on the floor of a committee room in the House of Representatives.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure, please.
Just in introducing the resolution, before there were 200 members of Congress, and by the way, this is getting what's called marked up. It's going through the Foreign Affairs Committee. That means there's momentum for it in the House, and that's all good.
Good.
Just the fact that it was introduced, we got word from the Bishop of Erbil, you have given us hope. Just the fact that it was introduced. So imagine the power if the United States speaks clearly. It gives the beleaguered community some hope, and it sets the conditions for their return in the future.
Oh, that's so edifying to hear, and at the same time, Congressman, motivating, because if he sees hope just in getting it moved inch forward, like a football, another yard, then we need to get him over to freedom and to get them to safety by getting this further past, and the Secretary of State and State Department to actually acknowledge this is Christian genocide and move it forward. And then that becomes a vehicle to unlock or to move forward more help and more aid to the persecuted Christians and those in the path of massacre. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is doing heroic action in Congress. He's a hero of conscience rights and religious freedom all over the world. And he needs your help. Congressman, thank you so much for all you do and for coming in and sharing this news with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do, Sheila. I'm so grateful for your voice. It is so helpful and so supportive of us, and it moves people into action. Just please keep doing what you're doing.
We are. We all will, and we're doing it jointly together. I hope to speak with you soon. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Stay with me, folks. But meanwhile, go on my show page and not only sign the petition. I got everything up on the show page. Watch the video, sign the petition. Going to be talking about the petition after the break, and call your congressman. Notify your congressman one way or another. Email, telephone, and get on board. The Genocide Resolution Bill. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll find out about that petition. I'm Sheila Liaugminas. This is A Closer Look, and you're listening to Relevant Radio.
Archbishop of Milwaukee, Jerome E. Listecki.
We're experiencing, obviously, violence within our society and the world because there's a separation from God and society. When we eliminate God from the vocabulary, when we eliminate God from the social consideration that we're involved in, we separate all of humanity. And when we don't have God, we fail to have an objectivity towards truth. Objectivity which is basically needed in order to be able to say this is right and this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, this is a true religion, this is a false religion. With God, we know where we stand. When God is eliminated and falls prey only to a secularist mentality, then suddenly everything is open, everything is redefined. There is no direct or clear sense of truth. Why do we need relevant radio? Because that's the voice of truth.
Talk radio for Catholic life. Relevant Radio. Your faithful companion on your Lenten journey. Relevant Radio.
What you put into Lent is what you get out of Lent. Mary Deturis Paust.
I came down to do this interview this morning to my office, and hanging over my desk was a Post-it note. It said, #pray. And that's my daughter, because her Lenten plan is to leave random positive Post-it notes in unexpected places for people every single day. She left that one for me because she knows that's one of my things I want to do but never take the time to do. I saw her putting one in the worship aid at church on Sunday that said, "You're wonderful," so that somebody at the next Mass would open up their worship aid and find this Post-it note.
Wow.
So she took a totally different turn. Rather than saying, "I'm going to give out sweets," she's leaving these Post-it notes, and she's also taking pictures with her phone every day of either a person or a thing she's grateful for, and then at the end of the week, printing them out and making sort of a wall in her room. Kind of a cool way for a teenager to approach Lent.
Wishing you a blessed Lenten journey. This is Relevant Radio.
Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Sheila Liaugminas. This is Relevant Radio, and we're going to get right to it. I got some important news to share with you to continue on about the genocide resolution that Congressman Fortenberry just spoke about when he questioned Secretary of State John Kerry yesterday and called upon him to use his power and authority to name it for what it is. It's genocide of Christians at the hands of ISIS. If it's called that, and if the genocide resolution bill passes, it will unlock some further powers of the government to not only spread awareness, but to get help to those in need. Meanwhile, speaking of concurrent resolution, concurrent with that taking place in the House of Representatives, there was a new petition launched yesterday. It was a joint effort by a number of groups, especially in defense of Christians and the Knights of Columbus. And here to tell us about that is Kirsten Evans, Executive Director of In Defense of Christians. Kirsten, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. We're thrilled to be here.
Well, it's great to have you in and to be the voice of In Defense of Christians on such an important project as this. And we just have a few minutes, Kirsten, but I want listeners to know what you launched, what the petition is. I'm going to post a link to, I already did, actually, and what that will do when you get a lot of signers on that petition.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, your listeners can go to stopthechristiangenocide.org. It's stopthechristiangenocide.org. And it's really simple. It takes them, it's going to take them a total of 30 seconds of their day to do. Log in. It's a petition that's directed to Secretary Kerry. And the reason why the Knights of Columbus and we decided to launch this petition is because there has been a conversation going on for quite a few months now in the country, and particularly in Washington, as to whether or not President Obama and the State Department will recognize the treatment of Christians and other minority communities under ISIS as a genuine genocide. There was a lot of talk some months ago that the administration had planned to make a public statement about the treatment of the Yazidi community under ISIS as being genocide, but leaving out these other communities. And first of all, I'd like to say, we're the first ones to say anything that the administration can do to bring awareness about the treatment of Yazidis under ISIS is fantastic. Without a doubt, the Yazidi community has probably the community that has suffered the most in all of the terrible treatment that ISIS is doing to people who don't agree with them or don't believe with them in the region. But they aren't the only ones. And our concern was that a designation that came out highlighting these atrocities towards the Yazidi community, kind of failing to mention that their brothers and sisters and their countrymen and their friends of other religious communities are experiencing the same, could also not be to the detriment of those communities who are left out. And so we just want to make sure.
I'll tell you what,
that
Kirsten.
Included. Mm-hmm.
Are you able to stay with me for a few minutes over the break afterwards?
Sure.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that after the break. More about the petition in defense of Christians. Don't go away.
Life is unpredictable, from the things that you can prepare for to those that you can't. When it comes to your family, you want to do everything you can to secure their future. And so does Catholic Order of Foresters. What sets Catholic Order of Foresters apart from other insurance companies is the added value of fraternal benefits. Catholic Order of Foresters members are people helping people, bonding together for mutual support, making a difference. And Catholic Order of Foresters is dedicated to providing its members with not only financial security, but also opportunities for spiritual, social, and charitable growth. Protect your family now with Catholic Order of Foresters, dedicated to bringing Catholic values to life since 1883. Call Mark now at 855-696-2085. That's 855-696-2085. Catholic Order of Foresters. P.O. Box 3012, Naperville, Illinois, 60566.
Archbishop of Milwaukee, Jerome E. Listecki.
We're experiencing, obviously, violence within our society and the world because there's a separation from God and society. When we eliminate God from the vocabulary, when we eliminate God from the social consideration that we're involved in, we separate all of humanity. And when we don't have God, we fail to have an objectivity towards truth. Objectivity which is basically needed in order to be able to say this is right and this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, this is a true religion, this is a false religion. With God, we know where we stand. When God is eliminated and falls prey only to a secularist mentality, then suddenly everything is open, everything is redefined. There is no direct or clear sense of truth. Why do we need relevant radio? Because that's the voice of truth.
Talk radio for Catholic life. Relevant Radio.
Giving voice to our shepherds. Relevant Radio. Archbishop of Chicago, Blaise Cupich.
Jesus tells all of us today to go back to where our journey of faith began, to be in touch with the joyful experience of being transformed by the intimacy God offers us, to be willing to share it with the next generation. Young people have always been attracted to authenticity of life, where words match deeds. Let's not be afraid to let our young people know about our life with God and how it began. Let's stay close to them. So close that we can hold them by the back of the neck and tell them what it means for us to believe and share with them how the gospel has brought joy and meaning to us and has transformed our lives.
Giving voice to our shepherds. Talk radio for Catholic life. Relevant Radio.
When the family at home is alive in their faith, and that's the first priority. When the youth group movement is strong and the Catholic schools are strong and vibrant, all of those produce a good fruit, which is vocations.
Father Michael Becker, the spiritual director and the rector of St. John Vianney College Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. So glad you put down the hammer and nails for a while and raising the roof to join us here.
Well, we're all scrunched in here like sardines, and we're going to probably have to do a little building addition as time goes on, but it's a good problem to have. Yeah, 134 men, and a real sign of hope for the future of the church. A lot of people don't get to have this view that I have, but God is still calling young men from all over, and they are wanting to make a difference in the lives of others, to do something heroic for Christ.
Are you hearing the call?
For the sake of the call.
Supporting vocations across America. This is Relevant Radio.
Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Sheila Liaugminas. This is Relevant Radio, and if you just tuned in, welcome to the program. It's quite a breaking news week for, in fact, just yesterday, fighting genocide. But where's that in the news cycles? They're talking about politics, and meanwhile, we're talking about saving people's lives. It's one thing when ISIS blows up ancient shrines and holy sites and churches, and that's horrible. They'll not be recovered. But what about the lives and the whole populations of communities? That's what Congressman Jeff Fortenberry came in and talked about with the genocide resolution, questioning yesterday yesterday Secretary of State John Kerry about the State Department actually appealing to him to use his power and authority to name it for what it is. Congressman Fortenberry has a genocide resolution out there. I've posted that on the show page. And also, In Defense of Christians, along with Knights of Columbus and other organizations, have jointly launched yesterday at the same time when this hearing was being held and the meeting was being held on the House of the Representatives floor. They were launching a petition to sign on to help name it for what it is. Call it genocide. And that will then unleash the ability for not only more awareness, but more aid to reach those who are in need. Continuing on with me for a few more minutes is Kirsten Evans, so we can really nail this down. What is this petition and what can we do? Kirsten Evans is the Executive Director of In Defense of Christians, who was just explaining before the break the petition, the fact that it's been acknowledged that the Yazidis are being massacred in a genocide. But what about Christians and why aren't they being named? And what will this petition, turning to the most positive terms here, what will this petition do going forward? We are where we are now. We're going forward. What can we do next? We can sign this petition. So, Kirsten, to get back to that, and you were making good points when we had to go to the bottom of the hour hard break, signing the petition. I put the link on the show page. What will happen when, first of all, what are you seeking in that? Of course, the highest number of signatures you can get. But what will that do?
What we're seeking, and thank you, Sheila, what we're seeking is to send a very clear message to the administration and to the State Department that the American people care about this issue. We are engaged in this issue. It is important to us as citizens. It is important for us to see our national leaders take moral leadership and international leadership on such an important human rights issue. It's important for them to know that we are watching, that we see, that we're not ambivalent to their actions. And by asking the State Department to make this designation, what we're doing is we're asking the State Department to make this a priority in the way that we engage ISIS in the region now and for years to come. The recognition of the atrocities that are being committed against these Christians and other religious minorities cannot go unnoticed. They can't go unaccounted for. And it is up to the leadership of the world, and in many ways the leadership of the United States, to make sure that these communities do not fall off the radar as the world looks to solve this problem of ISIS.
Well, it's so good, isn't it, that we can take some action in our hands. Congressman Fortenberry called on everyone to notify their congressman, get in touch, find out if they signed the genocide resolution, signed on to that, thank them for that, he asked. If they haven't, urge them to. And now you've got something else to do with this genocide resolution. StopTheChristianGenocide.org. You can make it it already is a Twitter campaign. It's a petition. I've got the link. We want to drive up those numbers. It's easy to do. It should be a grassroots effort. Kirsten, thank you so much for all you do, for launching this in conjunction with the Knights of Columbus and others. In Defense of Christians is an excellent organization doing the work we need so desperately, being the voice for the voiceless. Thank you very much for doing it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for being here telling us all about it. Thank you, Kirsten. Got the link online. And now continuing with me is someone else who works In Defense of Christians, Kathryn Jean Lopez, who I referred to up front today when I spoke with Congressman Fortenberry, who's had a couple of, among many other articles in National Review Online, a couple of articles out. One was earlier in February. It was called Notice the Genocide. How about that? No, just take a look at it. It's the right thing to do, and it'll make things better, she said. Now there's a new one yesterday that happened on the same day. Congressman Fortenberry was questioning on the floor of the House Senator John Kerry, and more than questioning him, asking him, urging him, petitioning him, pleading with him, if you will, to use the power and authority of the State Department to acknowledge the ISIS genocide of Christians and the power that would have then to spread awareness and to carry this thing forward. Just the hope of that promise, Congressman Fortenberry said, caused the Bishop of Erbil to get in touch with him and say, we now have hope. Folks, that's what we can do. That's what we can do. And joining me now on all of this is Kathryn Jean Lopez, who wrote those articles and writes just like I do. We beat this drum, and we do all we can because we know we have to. It's our mandate. We're going to have to make an accounting someday. What did you do with what I gave you? We all have the ability to reach out somehow. Kathryn Lopez is editor-at-large of National Review Online, senior fellow of the National Review Institute, and founding director of Catholic Voices USA, and she uses her voice so effectively all the time. Kathryn, thanks for coming in today and talking about this. What a trooper.
No, thank
You're
you,
great.
Sheila, for doing this. Thank you for having Kirsten on. Because as you said, I just want to add to your praise for In Defense of Christians, because they really they're trying to be the platform for some really hard work. Obviously, the answers are not simple in the Middle East, but we do know that the area benefits from having Christians as a leaven in the area, in what we call the cradle of Christianity, and the idea that's before us right now, the real existential threat, the real prospect that there will be no Christians in the Middle East region. It's a real possibility, and our response has to be not on our watch. Now, obviously, there are Christians. They just can't go back. But frankly, for a lot of them, if we're talking about Iraq and Syria, it's not like they're given the choice, and it's not clear whether they will be given the choice or not. As so many are languishing on, in storage units on church property in Lebanon and Jordan, and thanks be to God, they do have somewhere to go. But as Kirsten was talking about, I'm sure Congressman Fortenberry, I know he comes on your show all the time, and has explained this. When you start talking genocide, it just opens the floodgates for some possibilities for these people in terms of refugee status and prioritization and things that I think we don't appreciate. Of course, the concern the administration obviously has is that if they acknowledge what's happening, then they will have a responsibility. So it's easier to look away, right? And so we should be so grateful. And I would encourage people just to say thank you to Jeff Fortenberry for keeping the spotlight on this. It could have been very plausible for that appropriations subcommittee hearing to happen yesterday and nobody say a word about the Christians. But Jeff made sure that wasn't the case, and we should be grateful for that. And
that's a very good idea.
Petition, because there's not a lot of gratitude when you do the right thing, and he's sort of
really
got this thankless job of just sort of tirelessly trying to focus people's attention when there are so many shiny objects that distract you, and
I know
so many other issues, obviously. But we can't look away from this, and there is something we can do. And yeah, honestly, it's pathetic right now. I'm sorry. Maybe we should get on a little national pride here. We're following Europe, okay? Thanks be to God, the European Parliament did what they did and acknowledged this genocide. But weren't we? Didn't we used to be leaders in this kind of thing?
Well, right.
I would hate to see us is surrender that moral leadership as Kirsten was talking about.
That's so important, and you make such an important point, Kathryn, that also at National Review, Nina Shea wrote about this as well, titled "Fearing the G Word, Genocide. The State Department Turns Its Back on Middle Eastern Christians." Now, that was last week, and now yesterday, Secretary Kerry, unfortunately, you posted a video to this in your article on National Review yesterday. Secretary of State John Kerry was in that discussion with Congressman Fortenberry on the floor. Congressman Fortenberry was pleading with him for the State Department to acknowledge this. But as Nina Shea said, and as I know Secretary Kerry heard from Congressman Fortenberry yesterday, that the European Parliament, particularly on February 4th, the European Parliament, like you say, Kathryn, we should be the ones to lead the way. That the European Parliament, with near unanimity and solid socialist support, passed a resolution declaring that ISIS is committing genocide against Christians and Yazidis. Yazidis are acknowledged, in some cases not Christians, but they acknowledged them, and other religious ethnic minorities. For crying out loud, we're the United States. We should have led the way. So there is nothing that should be holding us back. I asked Congressman Fortenberry, so when I watched the video you linked in your National Review Online article, he chose Christ and was beheaded. You said, will John Kerry insist the Christian genocide be named? That's what we're calling for. You embedded 2 videos in there. One from In Defense of Christians, and the other was of Congressman Fortenberry speaking with Secretary Kerry. Kathryn, I made some notes on that exchange, and Congressman Fortenberry called on Secretary Kerry he said, I want to call on you to ask you to assert your authority and power. And then he went on to wrap up that question, or the plea. He said, because the very future of the region depends upon this. And then Secretary Kerry said, well, he thanked him for the story about the mother giving the crucifix of her beheaded son, who would not renounce his faith, to Pope Francis. And then he said, I will take into consideration the evidence and make a decision on this. And I asked Congressman Fortenberry, with all due respect to our nation's leaders, what's taking the time? We can look at the evidence right now ourselves and see this is genocide.
Right. And I thought that Congressman Fortenberry did a beautiful job of just prodding his conscience. And it's not just John Kerry's conscience, it's the conscience of the nation, right? And I don't know, I don't know how, not only knowing what the European Parliament and others have said now, but I don't know how you can look at the evidence of even just testimony that Congress has heard in committees and look away from this and not call it genocide. And John Kerry doesn't have to look to Europe, right? He can look to the former Secretary of State, his predecessor, Hillary Clinton, who has said that that this is a genocide against Christians in Iraq and Syria by ISIS. This isn't a partisan issue. It's a no-brainer at this point. In many ways, unless you really just have chosen to walk away from moral leadership. And I would hate to think that's what's going on here, and I would certainly hate to see it. Again, Pope Francis, who is so popular with so many on the left, you think maybe they take the hint from him and follow his lead, but it's not happening yet, and it really is it is astonishing, and we need to do better.
Well, and Pope Francis is among them. So as you point out in your article, if the U.S. government would only follow the lead of Pope Francis, the European Parliament, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, Hillary Clinton, Marco Rubio, and so many others. And it just, the big question is, well, why aren't they? And Congressman Fortenberry, when I asked him, was it bureaucracy? He said, I wish you hadn't asked me that. And I felt really bad. I thought, oh no, I wish I hadn't as well. But it's because it's a tough question to answer, and I guess it is speculative when a congressman himself doesn't know the answer. Former Congressman Frank Wolf has come in here and said the same thing. One just doesn't know, but one does what they can. And that's what we're calling on all of the listeners right now to do. And right before this break, Kathryn, let's point him again that there is a petition just launched yesterday. It's called StopTheChristianGenocide.org. You can find it there. You can find it on my show page. And turn this into a campaign. Hashtag campaign on Twitter, a Twitter campaign on Facebook. Social media can generate a lot of support for this petition. And all it says is, we, the undersigned, believe America must end its silence about the ongoing genocide against Christians and other minority groups in Iraq and Syria. My guest, Kathryn Jean Lopez, has more of what that statement said when they launched the petition yesterday, Knights of Columbus in Defense of Christians. And we'll talk about that after the break. Go check it out on my show page. It's ready there right now for you to sign and click share and pass on. I'm Sheila Liaugminas here with Kathryn Lopez. We'll be right back.
This is Talk Radio for Catholic Life.
John Harper of Morning Air.
We talk about solutions. We look at the issues of the day, both nationally and around the globe, through the filter of the truth of the church. We have fun and marry it with faith, and we take you all around the world to meet some of the best people that you'll ever want to hear on the radio to help you in your faith journey. That's what we do here on Morning Air.
Morning Air with John Harper. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern, 6 Central on Relevant Radio.
Apparently the saint was someone who needed to grow in patience.
Father Dennis Cooney on The Inner Life.
He was in the chapel and he was praying to the Lord, please grant me great patience. And I find that the greatest challenge to patience is not so much with God, it's with people, including myself. So what happened was he walks out of the chapel and he runs into this brother in his community who was the most lovely individual who would never, ever cause anyone to get aggravated. But this particular time he said or did something that made this saintly man very angry, and he yelled at him and then realized how impatient he was. So he went back to the chapel and he said, Lord, why did you do this to me? Why did you allow me to become aggravated with the sweetest man in our whole community? And the Lord said this to him within his own heart and soul. He says, you were praying for patience. I was just giving you an opportunity to practice it.
The Inner Life with Chuck Neff. Weekdays, 12 Eastern, 11 Central on Relevant Radio.
The Relevant Radio app.
Download that mobile app and listen to us anywhere, especially if your signal gets a little weak wherever you're listening. And tell people around the country that may not have Relevant Radio, whatever platform you're using. It's a great way to stay plugged in to the great programming here at Relevant Radio.
Talk radio for Catholic life.
The Relevant Radio app is free and available for iPhone, Android, Kindle, or Amazon Fire.
Download at relevantradio.com, keyword app.
Take your faith wherever you go with the Relevant Radio app.
The Relevant Radio toll-free studio line is sponsored by Catholic Order of Foresters, dedicated to bringing Catholic values to life since 1883. For more information, go to catholicforester.org or relevantradio.com, keyword COF. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Sheila Liaugminas. Time flies when we're having an important conversation like this. We're talking about what a big week I am, talking about it a lot, but what a big week this has been for fighting genocide. And so is my guest, Kathryn Lopez. She's been writing about it. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry was in the first segment to talk about what he did yesterday in the House of Representatives in having a subcommittee hearing with appropriations subcommittee hearing on state and foreign operations, and that involved Secretary of State John Kerry, and he called upon him to assert his authority and power in the power of the State Department to call genocide what it is. Christian genocide at the hands of ISIS, what it is. It's so obvious to all of us watching and paying attention and following this from all of the great human rights leaders and activists and writers like my friend Kathryn Lopez is a champion of this. She writes articles for National Review in every place she has a voice, and that's pretty far and wide. She writes about this, talks about this, tweets about this. Notice the Genocide is one of her articles. This newest one is yesterday during that subcommittee hearing with Secretary Kerry. She posted online, National Review. I've got it up, posted on the show page today. An article that's got embedded in it video of Congressman Fortenberry talking with Secretary Kerry. Watch for yourself. Hear what they have to say. And meanwhile, In Defense of Christians, in conjunction with the Knights of Columbus, launched a new petition yesterday. And we were telling you about that as well, that you can go sign. And a news release came out telling you about the situation and why it's so important to sign it. Kathryn, from your article about that release, let's talk about that for a moment. You take a snip that says Christians in Iraq and Syria have suffered injustice after injustice by being kidnapped, killed, having their homes and churches confiscated and destroyed, being forced to flee for their lives. And this really struck me. Because of hit squads, they fear to enter UN refugee camps. And as a result, are often excluded from immigration to the West. What's left for them?
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was exactly what I was referencing when I mentioned testimony that Congress has already heard. Carl Anderson from the Knights of Columbus, among others, have testified to relaying these reports on the official congressional record. My point being, the U.S. government cannot pretend that they don't know what's going on.
Right.
God, there are people telling them, and so this is coming down to a question of whether we're actively going to look away or not. And yeah, as you said earlier, I don't want to have to answer for our looking away. What I'm so grateful to also for the Knights of Columbus and In Defense of Christians is this petition, because it does give people something to do. You know, writing about this issue, the persecution of Christians is not a sexy topic. People don't want to click on it because they don't want to. You don't want to know about it because you feel powerless and you don't think you can do anything about it. So
that's true.
Better not to read about it, right? Because you can tackle some problems that are closer to home and you can deal with. But the fact of the matter is, when our government is ignoring the issue, it appears at the moment, all indications have been that they'll acknowledge that there's a genocide of Yazidis, but will not acknowledge the Christians. We can't stand for that. So the petition gives an opportunity to say, hey, look, I'm an American and I care about these people, and we have to show some moral leadership here. In addition, the Knights of Columbus also have this $40 for Lent drive.
That's right.
Where they're encouraging people to donate simply $40 to their fund for persecuted Christians in Iraq and Syria. And I've been in the room actually for conversations. I probably wasn't supposed to overhear, but I was glad I did because it gives me even added confidence that I already had about the legitimacy of all of this. I mean, they literally, a bishop on the grounds will give them the list of things that they need immediately, and they are putting it in the hands of the bishop, of the people who were doing the work on the ground. It's as no overhead as I've ever seen anything. And so that's something I'm confident to give money in. And they've been very serious about making sure that they have that they're responding to the needs. And a couple of months ago, it was even involved bringing a little girl over here who needed emergency surgery, and they did that, and they were able to do that and bring her family over. And so she's gone back to Erbil, I believe, now. But that's the kind of thing that you can support, and so you're not powerless. And then, of course, the other aspect of this is, please, 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 can we be praying for these people, our brothers and sisters in Christ? And we've talked about this before on the radio show. It can be shocking to go around. I mean, this didn't start yesterday now, and the worst of it didn't start yesterday. And how many times do you go to a church and there isn't a petition for the persecuted Christians? I mean, this should be something that we do all the time without question. We should be doing more. We should be having a holy hour before the end of the Lent. How about, it doesn't take that much. Right. If a couple of parishioners knock on Father's door and say, you know what, we want to do this. I think he'd probably be delighted to hear that.
No doubt, and that puts it so well, Kathryn, because Father always in all the parishes has the pastors and the associates have so many administrative duties as well as liturgical duties and sacramental duties, and just so many. And people would be surprised. I mean, they should think more about this. We all should to be of help to them. It's like instead of saying, "Why doesn't Father do this?" or "Why doesn't our parish do that?" Be the one to bring it to them and say, introduce it, but say, "Father, I'll take this on if you'll let me, if it's okay with you." And he's probably going to be really glad to hear about it. So that's a great idea. Kathryn, that and in under 2 minutes here, let's remind people again. For Twitter, a Twitter campaign, #StopTheChristianGenocide is on In Defense of Christians website, along with the petition for people to sign. That's one. And the other, the Knights of Columbus, what is it, $40 for Lent?
$40 for Lent, yeah.
Okay. That's something that we've got to just keep regenerating out there.
And you can find both of those things, both the petition and the link for donating money on the Knights of Columbus website. It's kofc.org.
Easy enough to remember. Those are a lot of things to do, and yet they're easy things to do. Every one of them. Contact your elected representative in Congress and ask. That's the least we can do. And you know what, Kathryn? It's easy for every one of those things. We can all contact our congresspeople. We can contact those who we elected into the House of Representatives and either say, if they've signed the petition, the genocide resolution, I should say, thank them for that. If they haven't, urge them to do that. That's one. Then sign the new petition launched by In Defense of Christians and Knights of Columbus. That's two. And then generate the awareness of it. #StopTheChristian Genocide on Twitter or on your Facebook Facebook page. Just post a link, click share on the ones I already put up, because I put up Kathryn's article. Click share on that. And then, as she said, $40 for Lent, Knights of Columbus. There's a lot that can be done with that, and the money goes right to the people who need it the most. And finally, but really first, to go full circle, is pray and pray and pray again daily, and talk to your pastor about putting this into the prayers of the faithful. Kathryn, thank you so much for being here and for all you do.
Thank you, Sheila. God bless you.
You are a gem. Thank you so much. Links are online, folks. I'll see you there.
A Closer Look with Sheila Liaugminas is a production of Relevant Radio. To access guest information and past shows, go to relevantradio.com, keyword Sheila.